What's the most dangerous thing happening in America today? Not the thing you hate the most or the worst thing. What is the most dangerous thing happening in America today? I'm going to explain it to you next, and it's about you. All that's coming up on I'm Right. I want you to imagine something right now. Just walk through this with me for a moment. I want you to imagine you going to the bathroom or going out to go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden you're being chased by a group of angry men. And you start running, and they're running after you, and it's very scary. And why is it very scary? Well, here's why. Because you know for a fact if those men catch you when you are on your way to the bathroom, they're going to eat you while you're still alive. What I just described to you is not something out of some low-rent horror movie somewhere. What I just described to you is something that really happened in real life. And you know why it happened? It happened because the state police gathered up its political enemies and sent them somewhere. That's a story. It's a brief story. If you have a strong stomach, you can look into the whole thing about a place called Nazino Island. It took place in, of course, communist Russia. What would happen in communist Russia? Well, you see, the government used its intelligence and police services to attack its political opponents. So they would come knock on your door in the middle of the night and drag you, your wife, your kids out of your home, and they would cart you off to a gulag somewhere. They would arrest people on their way to go get groceries if they didn't have the proper papers on them. They would arrest people just out of boredom and ship them off to gulags somewhere. This is all state police stuff, keep in mind. This is all official. This is all legal under a broken, corrupt system. And there was just one area. There are a million gulag stories I could tell you, but there was one area called Nazino Island where they ended up sending 6,000 people, only the communists didn't even build facilities for them. They simply dropped them on the island where 4,000 plus of them proceeded to get eaten by the other prisoners. I didn't tell you that story to make you cringe, wince, vomit in the trash can, or do anything like that. I told you that story because I want you to be very, very, very clear about the stakes when we start talking about a politicized FBI going after its political opponents, a politicized CIA going after its political opponents, a politicized NSA going after its political opponents. This is not simple standard politics as usual. You run a smear campaign and he runs a smear campaign and you tell people I walk on water and he's the devil and he says the same thing and it's normal politics, right? This is the force of government, the most powerful force in our nation, sadly, the force of government aligning itself firmly with the left and deciding on its own that you are a domestic terrorist. Once they get past that step, guess what step 2 is? You running from the men while you're trying to go to the bathroom. I can't make it any more serious for you than that. What's happened in this country with the FBI becoming a political enforcement arm of the Democratic Party and the CIA and NSA doing the same thing is without question the most dangerous thing happening in the United States of America today, because it ends with you in a political prison right next to your wife and your daughter and your son and your sister and your mother. That's how it ends. How do I know it ends that way? Because I read history books. I don't need to read lying modern day headlines. History books tell me that's how it ends. You do not want the enforcement arm of your government picking a side because it ends with death, widespread death and misery. What happened last night, what my friend Tucker Carlson admitted on his show last night about the NSA is not a story about Tucker Carlson. It's not a story about Fox News or cable news pundits. It's not a story about me. It is a story about all of us, and you had better pay very, very close attention when he explains what happened, because this is coming for you too.
We heard from a whistleblower within the U.S. government who reached out to warn us that the NSA, the National Security Agency, is monitoring our electronic communications and is planning to leak them in an attempt to take this show off the air. Now, that's a shocking claim, and ordinarily we'd be skeptical of it. It's illegal for the NSA to spy on American citizens. It's a crime. It's not a third world country. Things like that should not happen in America. But unfortunately, they do happen, and in this case, they did happen. The whistleblower, who is in a position to know, repeated back to us information about a story that we are working on that could have only come directly from my texts and emails. There's no other possible source for that information, period. The NSA captured that information without our knowledge and did it for political reasons. The Biden administration is spying on us. We have confirmed that.
How do you feel? Now, I want you to do something else for me right now. I want you to pause the show if you want. Maybe wait and do it after show. Maybe do it while you listen to my voice. I want you to go through the last 20 text messages you sent to a friend. How'd that look in the cover of the newspaper tomorrow? Last 20 emails you sent to a friend. How'd that look on the cover of the newspaper tomorrow? How's your job security when that comes out? You understand these people are preparing to make you the enemy of the state, right? All those crazy dystopian novels out there, it's happening. It's happening right now. It's happening because Democrats have filled the federal government with their allies. And not just the normal idiots at the EPA, not just the NEA. Democrats have very purposely filled the Federal Bureau of Investigation with their allies who work for them and think you're the enemy. Our spy agencies, CIA, NSA, you're the enemy. What do your text messages look like on the front of tomorrow's newspaper? These people are coming for you. Where is your protection? It doesn't exist. That's the scary part. That's why we live in such dangerous times when it's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Who's coming to save you? Nobody. When it's CIA, NSA, who do you turn to? Nobody. Once you have politicized corruption ingrained, taking root at the federal level, there is no escape from it. I don't care whether you like me, like Tucker Carlson, hate all of us, none of that matters at all. You need to understand, no matter your political persuasion, even if you're a Democrat, you need to understand you don't want the federal government having that kind of power. Mao killed 70 million of his own people, Stalin 50 million, Pol Pot 25% of the population. How did they kill them? We always put out these words, right? They killed them. Well, he killed them. He killed millions. He killed millions. How'd they kill them? Federal law enforcement arm went and knocked on that door in the middle of the night, and you don't get to wake up the next day. That's as real as it gets. And if you think you are somehow immune from that because you're a citizen of the United States of America, and it says land of the free right there in some documents I read one time. If you think any of that's going to save you from people who hate your guts and think you're a Nazi white supremacist holding them back from their communist utopia, then you've never read a history book in your entire life. How often do I come on here and tell you things like this? Not very, right? I don't do all that the world's coming to an end stuff. If the Federal Bureau of Investigation, CIA, and NSA decide they're just going to overtly start going after all the enemies of the Democratic Party, that is the end of the world. It's certainly the end of your world. And why is this happening? How in the world would anyone at the NSA, anybody, low level, high level, how would anybody feel like they had a right to go after a cable news host's text messages and emails, trying to get his show off the air? How would they have that right? Well, how do we handle the Carter Page stuff? Do I need to remind you? Kevin Kleinsmith, FBI lawyer, do I need to remind you that he changed evidence? He falsified information, specifically so the Federal Bureau of Investigation could take an application down to the FISA court and get a warrant to spy on an American citizen. Not just an American citizen who was working for Donald Trump, who was the opponent of the sitting political power, Barack Obama, at the time. Okay, well, that was step one. Actually, that was about step 1,000 when it comes to FBI malfeasance. But let's fast forward past that. It's easy to crush Obama and crush this scumbag Klein-Smith. Oh, it should be noted, Klein-Smith got probation, suspended from the bar for a year. Who did that, though? And we can blame Obama. We can blame the FBI. Who did that, though? Do I need to remind you that Donald Trump had two AGs in his time, Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr. Both of them were good guys, right? They're good guys. He's a good man. If I had to hear that one more time, especially about Jeff Sessions, I would vomit in this trash can sitting right beside me. He's a good man. He's a good man. Oh, he's a good guy. Both of them treated the FBI falsifying information so they could spy on an American citizen. Both of them treated it like a 6-year-old who wanders into a gas station and stuffs a Butterfinger in his pocket. Oh, that crazy FBI. Now, those guys, it's not a big deal. Let's not make this a partisan thing here. Let's not make a lot of it, okay? One guy at the FBI violated someone's rights. No big deal. I'll tell you what they did. What they did was they sent a gigantic flare in the air to the FBI, CIA, NSA. Only that flare had writing on it. And what did that writing say? It told every single scumbag that works in those organizations, go ahead, go after Republicans. It's open season on Republicans, even if you get caught. I mean, black and white, caught red-handed like Klein-Smith was. No defense of it, right? Even if you get caught, we're not going to be partisan about it. It's no big deal. Now, one final question before we wrap this whole thing up here, because I know you're uncomfortable by now. How do you think the FBI would handle you if you falsified information of any kind? How do you think the NSA thinks about you after those last 10, 20, 30 text messages you sent? Do they think you're a white supremacist? Do they think you're potentially a domestic terrorist? Somebody they should maybe look into a little bit more. When I tell you this is the most dangerous situation in the United States, I mean that all the way. This is for the Republican Party. If you have a Republican congressman or senator and they don't take this deadly serious and promise you they're going to do something about it. Not more hearings, not more committee meetings. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Not fundraising emails. Jesse, please send me $50 and I'll go after the FBI. No. No more words. I want to know who's going to federal prison or I'm voting you out of office. That's how you have to conduct yourself from now on. Sorry, I'm a little bit fired up tonight. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Now, seems like the perfect time to talk to you about your holster. You know that weapon you should be training with at all times? That weapon you should learn how to use safely? Well, I know you've probably already taken those steps. We talk about it enough. You practice. You know, safety is always a concern. You do all those things. Do you have it in some big box hunting store holster? Did you really spend the time and the money making sure you're proficient with a weapon and then go stuff it in some holster that's going to snap off on your belt when you need it most? Stop playing games with that stuff. We're talking about your life. We're talking about you going home and seeing your wife and kids or your husband the next day. Go to Northwest Retention Systems. Go to nwretention.com. Get a custom holster. A custom holster. Look, the designs are incredible, right? They have all these great designs, so you'll enjoy that part. But nwretention.com. Make sure you use the promo code Jesse. That gets you 10% off and free shipping on everything over $100. We have a great show. Hang on for Carol Roth tonight. We'll be back.
When I left office, we gave the new administration the most secure southern border our country had ever seen by far. Immediately upon taking office, Joe Biden deliberately and systematically, through his people, because I don't think he did it, dismantled America's border defenses and incited a flood of illegal migrants like this country has never seen. They violated our laws from every single corner of the globe they were invited in, and we can't do that.
But we did do that. He's right, by the way. Everything he just said right there is correct. We did do that, though. And I realize there hasn't been anything new and hot in the news about the border. Trump is going down there to take a visit at the border with Greg Abbott, and I'm sure we're going to hear more from Donald Trump tomorrow. If he says anything, obviously we'll play it for you, but this is not going away. This border problem, it's not going away. Democrats are simply not able to stop it. That's what has fascinated me so much about the border since Joe Biden took over. It's been, it's going to be 4 years. I mean, obviously, Joe Biden is not going to be there for all 4 years, but it's going to be 4 years of this. We've done special after special after special on it. We talk about it endlessly. But the reality on the ground is this. It's not just talk. People are illegally pouring into our country at a rate much higher than people think, by the way, it should be noted. People think more than 50% said less than 50,000. That's the number people think are coming in. The real number is closer to 5 times that. We're going to be well north of 2 million people this year. A lot of people are saying it's going to be 3 million. That's not a problem that's going to make headlines every day for obvious reasons, because the media is going to play cover for Joe Biden and cover for Joe Biden and cover for Joe Biden. But the reality is this. That's something you and I have never seen before in the history of this country. That's the remaking of a nation. 3 million people? That's 1% of the population. That's adding 1% to your population every single year. And it's 1% that don't care about your culture. They're not coming here to put a hand on the Bible and raise the right hand and pledge allegiance to the flag. They're coming here, obviously some for I guess you would call it good reasons, some for bad reasons, but you're not adding 1 million citizens or 1% citizens. You're adding 1% people who don't have any loyalty to this country at all. And where are they going? What are they doing? Well, the answer is they're sending these people everywhere. They're not sending them even with court dates now. They're releasing them into the public with the promise there's going to be a court date down the road. And what are they doing? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing. They're going into your local hospital for their basic care because America has these laws that say we have to treat everybody. So they're going into your hospital and flooding it and getting free care and then bailing. They're putting their kids in school with your kids. So that classroom your child was going to have, that was going to be 14, 15 people with real personal attention from the teacher, that classroom just became a class of 40 that now has to be bilingual, and your child never gets a question answered at all year. What does it look like for jobs? Oh, I don't know. Do you think these mega corporations, many supported by the GOP, by the way, do you think these mega corporations want to pay as much in labor as they do? Do you think they like it when the hotel they have out in the desert somewhere, do you think they like it when that hotel comes up with some better labor numbers? How'd they do that? Oh, I don't know, boss. Looks like the cost of a dishwasher went down a little bit this year. They're remaking the United States of America. They're remaking it right in front of our eyes. And what's most frustrating about this right now, the only reason I don't talk about this every night is this. What's most frustrating about it is there's nothing you and I can do about it. There's even precious little your governor, state legislature, senator, congressman, there's precious little they can do about it. We're stuck with this. And I have all these poll numbers I could read you right now about how the American people prefer Donald Trump's border over Joe Biden's border. And that's real, right? All these poll numbers say that. Well, okay. November was like yesterday. Where were you then? Where were you then? You're shocked that Joe Biden has an open borders policy? Do me a favor and pay attention before you go vote next time. I don't mean to be harsh, but I've had quite enough of this buyer's remorse 6 months after. I knew exactly what was going on, and I'm a moron. All right. There are things that make my blood boil. Rip-off artists are one of them, especially rip-off artists who prey on old people, who prey on kids. These timeshare companies that sell people a timeshare and then drown people in red tape when they want out of the timeshare, that is dirty business. These people belong in jail. It drives me crazy. It's why I'm such a big fan of Newton Group. If you have a timeshare and you want out of it, and you've tried to get out of it, and you're getting things like, well, next year. Oh, well, I mean, sure, for $4,000 we'll let you out. Well, no, I mean, maybe we'll let your kid out after you die. That's real. If you're getting things like that, you don't have to take that. Call 888-84-JESSE. That's 888-84-JESSE. Or go to timesharejesse.com. Newton Group is going after these people, and they're helping people every single day. Go now. We'll be back. Didn't you hear? There's a new Delta variant of coronavirus out there. What does that mean for you? Well, I mean, I can't say. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what it means for your physical health or anything like that, but I do know this. If you're a small business owner, that feeling you get on your back, that's a gigantic target the government's painting on you once again. Joining me now to talk about that and many other things is former investment banker and author of a book you really, really, really need to read, The War on Small Business, Carol Roth. Carol, look, someone got sick. Small business clearly has to close again, right?
Absolutely. And we're going to make sure that the small business is closed, but the Amazon warehouse stays open. We're going to make sure that the weed dispensary stays open, even though it was illegal in our county a couple of years ago. We're going to make sure that your dog can get its nails groomed and its hair done, but people can't do. Those things are important. They're essential, Jesse. The government said that they are essential. But your small business isn't. And, you know, if you happen to be a bank, don't worry about it. We're going to bail you out because you're too big to fail. But if you're a small business, sorry, you are too small to matter and too hard to control. You will get crumbs or nothing, and you will like it.
Carol, how bad was the last year and a half for small business? People know it's bad, right? Especially people watching this show. They've seen you on here before, but they can't really quantify how bad. How bad was it?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about how many big businesses and how many small businesses there are in this country, people don't realize there's only about 10 to 15,000 big businesses. There were, before COVID, 30.2 million small businesses. We know that as of June of last year, at least 400,000 of them closed and millions more are fighting to survive. But if you just took 400,000, which is a devastating number, that's 40 times the number of big businesses in this country. And then, of course, there's this giant wealth transfer that was enabled, that while these small businesses were struggling, 7 tech companies gained $3.4 trillion in value. It was a record year for initial public offerings. Record amount of money was made through vehicles called SPACs. So if you were in the club, if you were connected, it was a banner year for you. There was all kinds of wealth being created. But if you were outside, if you were decentralized, if you were somebody that they could not control, if you were standing in the way of central planning, for a large portion of them, it was an epic disaster. And we're seeing that Alignable just came out with their most recent poll. About 35% of the small businesses polled aren't sure that they're going to be able to pay their rent in June if they've even survived this far.
Carol, Describe, now everybody knows I have this huge, super advanced brain and I have this community college education, which prepares me for these things. But let's say, for instance, I wasn't really all that smart. Explain why there was a transfer of wealth. Exactly why. Break it down in layman's terms, please.
Yeah, so
For
you've
other
got
people.
a couple of things going on. So on a fiscal basis, when you shut down a small business, obviously you cannot patronize that business any longer. So if you need to spend, you're going to spend at the businesses that are open, which happen to be the Amazons and the Walmarts. So they actually increased their revenue. But then there was also a piece enabled by the Federal Reserve that pumped all kinds of money into the stock market. And so basically, they enabled the stocks to increase in value above and beyond just that increase in revenue. And usually, like before the financial crisis, the Federal Reserve had less than $1 trillion on its balance sheet that it used to create liquidity in the markets. Today, it has just about $8 trillion on its balance sheet. And by the way, this is money that they've created out of nowhere, pumped into the system, given big businesses all kinds of access to capital, while you, the saver, you, the retiree, earn absolutely nothing on your money. You are funding the big businesses' expansion.
Carol, I try not to be a cynical person. I certainly try not to point fingers because, as everybody knows, I'm the worst person on the planet. But I saw this and it made me want to choke somebody, so I need you to talk me off a ledge. There's a poll, Fox News poll. Of all the factors people are most concerned with economically, people are most concerned with inflation and higher prices, followed by taxes and unemployment. Okay, so Carol, help me understand this. They're concerned with inflation and higher prices and taxes and unemployment. But I remember the American people, not everyone, obviously a lot of people watching this show won't be in this boat, but I remember the American people also screaming for more COVID stimulus and government protection last year. Would you please merge those two worlds for me, because I struggle with that?
Well, I really am a glass is half full kind of gal, Jesse, so I really feel like I'm the right person to do this.
Yeah, of course.
This is the problem. This is the disconnect, and this is why the government has gotten so strong, is because they throw crumbs at people. They throw you, some Donnie dollars and some Biden bucks, and people want to get their money, which, by the way, is your own money. The government doesn't actually make anything. And so they don't want to give up their little piece at the utter expense of everything else. They don't realize that the $100 they're giving you or the $1,000 they're giving you is actually costing you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's enabling this consolidation of wealth and power. And if you look at all the things the government has interfered with, small business, which, ownership of a business, the stock market, ownership of equity, the housing market, ownership of a home. It almost sounds like, Jesse, they don't really want the average American to own anything, which we know is the path to wealth creation, which is a very, very scary thing for economic freedom in this country.
Carol, I understand that, again, I rely on you for all the intelligence on this show when it comes to financial things. But what it sounds like you're saying to me, when we just put up that graphic with the prices, we have home prices all-time high. What that sounds to me like is the destruction of the middle class. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
People who are doing well are going to be fine. Poor people are, and I'm not trying to be callous here, they're still going to be poor. But that sounds like what you're doing is you're pricing middle class people out of being middle class and shoving them down into poverty.
Yeah, I think it's even scarier than that. It's the destruction of the middle class, but it's also the destruction of any economic freedom and capitalism. It's really moving us towards this central planning control. And I don't care what words you want to use for it. Socialism, communism, hybrid socialism, democratic socialism, I don't care what it is. It's central planning. So if you, like you said, are at the upper echelon, you are in the club, you're going to be part of the people that owns that wealth. If you're at the bottom, you're going to be on the government dole. And if you're in the middle, you're probably going to move towards that bottom. And what were the stimulus checks? Those were conditioning you that the government is going to take care of you. Next, they're going to roll out UBI. And this is the path to them controlling more. But I'm telling you, the only people who get wealthy on the government dole are the politicians.
What's UBI, Carol? I thought that was a personal decision women made.
Sometimes it is. This is what Andrew Yang was talking about every time he's run for every office. And I don't know, he might run for class president next week, so you'll probably hear it again. But UBI is universal basic income. So it is the government guaranteeing you a benefit for existing, which is just basically a shell game. I mean, if I have money, and I'm working, I don't need to give it to the government so that they can take my dollar, take 25 cents out of it and give me back 75 cents. That makes no sense. And if you happen to be somebody who's poor, we have social programs. So this is just a big scam for the government to take more of our money, consolidate more of their power, promise more things so that they can continue to consolidate their purview, the laws, the regulations, the money, the power and the control, and that we just completely destroy any semblance of a free market here in this country. Wait, was I supposed to be the optimistic one? I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, it's hard to paint. It's hard to paint the Titanic a new color and convince people things are sailing along just fine. Carol, where can people get this book? Go buy her book.
All right. So obviously it's sold wherever fine books are sold. But if you want to support a small business and buy it, put your money where your mouth is, you can go to bookshop.org and they will actually fulfill it from a local small business bookseller instead of the people who are usurping everything. But I'm a capitalist. So if you're going to destroy the world, you can buy it wherever you want.
Hear me now. Bookshop.org. Bookshop.org. We have to be more purposeful with how we spend our money. Carol, I'm glad you got to talk to me tonight.
I'm glad for me as well. It's been an honor and a privilege to be in your presence, Jesse, as usual.
Yes, ma'am. I know it has. Carol Roth, everybody. We have Peter Roth coming up next. You're going to enjoy this. Now, here's what you're not going to enjoy. Let's talk about you dipping tobacco, you smoking cigarettes. No, you're not getting lectured. I've burned through plenty of heaters in my life, and I've had more dip in my lip than you have. Believe me, I have. So you're not getting lectured. There's no judgment here. But there is a shelf life on how long you can do that. But I know, speaking for me personally, when I decided it was time for me to quit, the hardest part was finding a way. I mean, I can want to quit all day long. I'm addicted to it. I don't know what to say. I don't have a better, I wish I could tell you I wasn't. I'm addicted to it. I need help. Jake's Mint Chew was perfect for me because what it did, it allowed me to replace my dip with something else. Or smoking. I get more smokers writing me about this than anything. They have CBD pouches. Jake's Mint Chew has 11 different flavors. They have a bunch of products, but they have these CBD pouches that take the edge off, and smokers are having huge success with this. Go to jakesmintchew.com. That's jakesmintchew.com. Use the promo code Jesse at checkout. That gets you 10% off. We'll be back.
One of the advisors said this weekend, Cedric Richmond, he said, Republicans defunded the police by not supporting the American Rescue Plan. But how is it that is an argument to be made when the president never mentioned needing money for police to stop a crime wave when he was selling the American Rescue Plan?
Well, the president did mention that the American Rescue Plan, the state and local funding, something that was supported by the president, a lot of Democrats who supported and voted for the bill, could help ensure local cops were kept on the beat in communities across the country. As you know, didn't receive a single Republican vote. That funding has been used to keep cops on the beat.
Joining me now is contributing editor to Newsweek, Peter Roth. Peter, I don't think there's anybody with an IQ above a gerbil who is actually going to believe Republicans are the ones who wanted to defund the police, so we don't necessarily have to go into that portion of it. But to me, when I heard her say that, what I heard was, man, there must be some bad-looking poll numbers going into the midterms for Democrats.
I think that's probably right. Crime has suddenly reappeared as an issue. I don't know if that's because the refugees that have been resettled by the Biden administration in red areas are running rampant, or just because things in New York City under Bill de Blasio are so bad. But Americans are being reminded once again that Democrats are soft on law and order. I mean, it's gotten so bad that Michael Dukakis, the man who refused to apologize for letting William Horton out of a Massachusetts prison 13 times on furloughs when he was doing life without parole, to come to Maryland rape a woman, stab her fiance, and now in a Maryland prison, is writing in the Washington press that Democrats need to be sensitive about the effect that crime can have on their campaigns.
Okay, Bill de Blasio, let's actually pause there for a moment because I know a lot of people hate New York. I happen to adore New York City. It's one of my favorite places in the world. And I hate that like the last 5 times I've gone to visit, people are peeing on the sidewalk in broad daylight in front of me. I'm stepping over homeless people. My entire life I've been there. I never once felt like this is probably not a place I would send my wife. Now it's not a place I would send my wife. How did that happen?
Well, I am a New Yorker, grew up just north of the city, spent a lot of time there, and it happened because Rudy Giuliani instituted policies that made the most dangerous city in America the safest city perhaps in the world outside of Singapore. Michael Bloomberg continued those policies, but the lefty progressives who think that incarceration is inherently racist elected de Blasio and got de Blasio to start rolling back the Giuliani-Bloomberg era protections. We're not going to arrest people for peeing in the street anymore. Are you kidding me? That's insane. They had the same problem in San Francisco. And now you have people getting out of jail without having to pay bail after they're arrested. You've got district attorneys around the country refusing to prosecute certain crimes. The field is ripe. It isn't, New York is bad, but again, it just isn't New York. New York just had so much crime that what happens in New York alone can move the national crime data. It can move it up or down. But it's not just New York. In Louisville, another city I know well, 100 murders so far this year. They had 100 murders entirely last year, and nobody talks about Chicago.
Why don't people talk about Chicago? No, actually, I take that back. I have a good idea why people don't talk about Chicago. It's because 99% of the people getting shot and dying there are gang members. And look, that's human nature. It's not a color thing. People don't really care when a gang member gets shot. They look and they think, well, that shouldn't have been a gang member. But the numbers, I mean, 40, 50 shot a weekend, Peter, that's Juarez numbers. That's Juarez numbers.
They don't talk about Chicago because despite what President Biden says, Chicago has some of the toughest gun control laws in the country. Chicago is living proof that gun control doesn't stop crime. And if you force the Democrats to admit that, you blow up their coalition.
Peter, why aren't Republicans forcing them to admit anything? And I say this, look, everybody knows I'm very, very, very hard on Republicans. I think they're spineless and weak, and they play defense at all times instead of playing offense. I find their messaging to be pathetic, but maybe I'm underwater on this. Peter, am I wrong?
You have to ask. I've been in Washington for 30 years. I grew up in New York, but I've been here for 30 years doing politics or writing about it. And I've got friends who say there are two parties in America. There's the evil party and there's the stupid party. The Republicans are the stupid party. They don't recognize opportunities when they present themselves. I used to work for an organization that was tied to Newt Gingrich. And he used to say, when you find an 80-20 issue where 80% of the people are with you, just go stand next to it. You don't even have to say anything. Just go stand next to it. But now the Republicans are running for cover because, number one, they've stopped talking to the American people. Number two, they are afraid of the progressive steamroller, which is a figment of their imagination. The most conservative candidate in the Democratic primary for mayor of New York, Eric Adams, a black man, a former police detective, and a former Republican, is going to be the Democratic Party's nominee for mayor. In economic terms, Biden was a course correction from what the country didn't like about Trump. The country understood very quickly that they overcorrected, that this wasn't what they voted for. They didn't vote for crime in the streets to go up. They didn't vote for their taxes to go up. They didn't vote for the panoply of social justice issues that we're all having to deal with, or the normalization of transgenderism. They didn't vote for that. The pendulum is already swinging the other way, but the Republicans don't seem to understand that.
Peter, why? And I bring this up this reason. I'm a low IQ person. Okay, I'm not intelligent. I'm certainly not highly educated. And I can see this stuff easily. It's laid out right in front of me. Well, we have a bunch of Harvard, Yale, and Stanford guys in the Republican Party, and they can't see it. Why? What's the disconnect?
Well, I think part of it is that their minds got poisoned when they were at Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, just like most kids who go to Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. But more importantly, I think they're afraid of controversy. You know, there is a school of thought that says, don't interfere with your enemy when he's destroying himself. And I think that's Sun Tzu. I think that's usually reasonable advice. But for 4 years, we watched the Democrats. I mean, if they'd left Donald Trump alone, he would still have had plenty of his own problems. I mean, one of the great disappointments for me politically of the Trump era was the number of times that Trump said or did something that would be scored as an unforced error in baseball. Something he just didn't have to do and shouldn't have done. The Democrats piled on, and look what they got. The Republicans ought to be piling on to the problems the Democrats have. They ought to be seeking to divide the squad from the moderates who were sitting in Republican districts, the Democrats who were sitting in districts that were won by Trump. They ought to be throwing fire on the gasoline on the fire. I think they're afraid of controversy because they understand, and to be fair to them, they understand that any controversy that erupts, the people who shape the message, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, etc., will shape the message in such a way that it hurts the Republicans and helps the Democrats. But I think that's foolish. There are plenty of other communications channels out there, like your show, like my column in Newsweek, ways to get these messages out there, and they ought to be pursuing them. I mean, this is hand-to-hand combat. At least that's what the Democrats think it is. I don't understand why McCarthy in the House, particularly, I think McConnell's a lot more sensitive to it, and is doing a better job because McConnell's been savaged and beaten by the left, unlike McCarthy. He understands the reality, but some of the other GOP senators don't. Some of the other GOP senators don't want to fight, and I don't get that. McCarthy now ought to be articulating what the alternative agenda for the House of Representatives would be if he were Speaker instead of Nancy Pelosi. There's no reason to wait.
Peter Roth, everybody. Peter, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jesse.
All right, these gender reveal things. I don't have anything against them. I realize this is the new thing, but I will tell you, sometimes when they go wrong, I find it funny. You're going to hang on for a second, and you're going to tell me whether you find it funny. Hang on. I just missed most of the social media era when I was younger, by the grace of God, right? By the grace of God, I just missed most of that era. So I can't say whether or not I would have done the gender reveal party thing with my kids. I would like to sit here and tell you the answer is no, but who knows? Maybe the old lady would have talked me into it. All that said, when they go wrong, because people get so elaborate on these things, when they go wrong, I don't know why. It's probably because I'm a bad person. I think it's hilarious. I watched this little short video. I died. Brother, you can't wait for a good pitch in a gender reveal party. You got to swing at that stuff. Come on now. All right. See you tomorrow.